welcome everybody to the Grueling Truth. We have a special NFL Wildcard Edition where myself and Matt Andruscavage, my co-host, will count down the top 10 wildcard games in NFL history. So, you ready to go?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, you want to start us off with your number 10, or do you want me to start us off?
Oh, I'll kick it off. Number 10, I've got the 2003 NFC wildcard Seahawks at the Packers. It was a game where neither team was probably going to threaten to go all the way, but two decent teams, Brett Favre's Packers and Matt Hasselbeck's Sean Alexander-led Seahawks. What was really interesting about this game is really one of the things that I look for in wildcards is either high scoring or a bunch of lead changes and maybe a dramatic finish. And this game really had that. You had a few lead changes. The Seahawks were able to come back very late in the game, tie the game by, I believe it was a Sean Alexander rushing touchdown to send the game into overtime. And this is the Matt Hasselbeck infamous, we want the ball and we're going to score game in overtime. And basically he started to move him, but he did throw a touchdown pass. Unfortunately for him, it went the other way. Yes, he did, but it went the other way to Al Harris.
Hey, but it was the only damn way Brett Favre was going to win that game, because we know what happens to Brett Favre.
Exactly.
Oh,
so, yeah, I mean,
my number 10.
It was.
Oh, go ahead.
No, it was a good one. Like you said, Favre probably wasn't going to make a dramatic comeback, but the defense kind of bailed him out, and it was a good game between two decent teams.
Well, and I think most Green Bay Packer fans count that as a Brett Favre comeback too.
Yeah, they do. Then that does actually, unfortunately, the way the NFL works, he gets credit for that.
Yeah, well, he's got to get it somehow. Doesn't matter how you get it, as Bill Belichick says, as long as you get it. My number 10 is a team I don't like very much that's playing this weekend against a team that I used to not like, but now they're harmless. I've got the 2002 wildcard game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. I think a lot of people overlooked this game. I think it's the last time Cleveland made the playoffs. They played at Heinz Field. The Steelers trailed 24-7, also trailed 33-21 against their arch rivals. Actually, the Browns. Do you realize that the Browns have not won a road game in the playoffs since 1969 still?
That's ridiculous. That's a long drought.
But do you know that I just realized something else while talking to you about this? My team's never won a road playoff game.
Really?
Because I'm a Bengals fan. They've never won a road playoff game. And this is the game where, probably the funnest name to say in the world scored with 51 seconds left to give them the win.
Yep.
Chris Fuamatu Ma'afala, or whatever his name is.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because I've got this game a little bit higher on my list.
The XFL MVP, Tommy Maddox, threw for 367 yards, 3 touchdowns. Came back to earth the next year. Hines Ward, who I think should be a Hall of Fame wide receiver, one of the best blocking wide receivers ever played a game, 11 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Plaxico, I shot myself in the thigh burris, went for over 100 yards also. And the Browns, Kelly Holcomb, threw for 429 yards and 3 touchdowns in a defeat. But as always, the Browns did their little Chicago Cubs thing and got beat in the playoffs. But that's my number 10.
That was a classic game. Very good one.
Oh, go ahead and talk about it. I thought maybe you'd have it higher. I thought that's what you said earlier.
I do. I have it a little higher on my list. I'll talk about it a little bit more. But, yeah, I totally agree. This definitely is deserving to be in a top 10 list.
All right. Now, my number 9 is a game I think a lot of people forget unless they live in the state of New York. It's the only old game that I have on here because, as you said when we talked earlier, most of the older playoff games were low-scoring affairs. I do think the 79 Denver-Houston game should be mentioned a little bit. I think that was really one of the most physical games I've ever seen. It was a defensive struggle that I didn't think was a boring game, kind of like the 91 AFC Championship when Denver and Buffalo played the 10-7 game. But
Right.
my number 9 was at Shea Stadium, Flushing, Queens, New York. The Buffalo Bills, 31. The New York Jets, 27. Great game. Bills jumped to a 24-0 lead by the second quarter. If I remember New York's, I think his name was Bruce Harper, fumbled the opening kickoff.
Yes, he did. 26-yard return.
Yeah, and I think Charlie Romes returned it 26 yards to the end zone. Then after a punt, Ferguson throws a 50-yard touchdown. I mean, it was basically a landslide early on, and then they kind of rectified it. Mark Gastineau played the game, and I don't like him, but he did force a fumble off of Ferguson. I think the game was 24-10 by halftime, and the game ended with Bills defensive back Bill Simpson. I think he intercepted the ball at the Buffalo 1-yard line with 2 seconds left. It gave the Bills their first playoff win since 1965, and actually it turned out to be the final NFL playoff game at Shea Stadium as the Jets moved to Giants Stadium. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? 3 years later. It also makes a lot of sense that Giants Stadium's in New Jersey and those teams are in New York. But what's your number 9?
My number 9 is 1993 wild card Packers at Lions. This was not I wouldn't say this was a tremendous game for the first three and a half quarters. But it had the setup game in Week 17 where Green Bay went to Detroit, and I believe the Lions won for the right to have the game.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's how Detroit got into the playoffs in '93, wasn't it?
Exactly. They were able to win. I believe they won the division, if I'm right. Might be wrong on that, but I believe they won the division on that game. And
yeah, they'd almost had to because I don't remember the Bears or Vikings being in the playoffs that year.
Exactly. I'm trying to think. Maybe the Vikings were against the Giants, but
that was a wild card game, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
the Vikings played at the Giants, so they couldn't have been the divisional winner.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So, I believe that's how the Lions won the division, got in the playoffs, and then they hosted Green Bay. Wasn't really that great of a game. There wasn't a whole lot that happened, so it sort of violates a lot of my criteria for making the top 10 a little bit, but it did have one.
Yeah, but your criteria has never been. I mean, you've never really been big on sticking to what you claim your criteria is, anyway. So it's no big deal.
There are times where that's true. I guilty as charged, but as much as Favre is probably other than Joe Namath, the most overrated quarterback in the history of the NFL, which I believe we agree on. This may have been the best throw I've ever seen him make, where he rolls out to his left, and so he's near the bottom of the screen, and Sterling Sharp just gets behind everybody on the top, and he throws it basically 75 yards in the air and hits Sharp in the end zone to win the game. I'm not not really one to talk about good Favre moments, but this really was one of the best finishes to a wild card game I've ever seen. So I think it deserves a cut.
And that was your number 9?
Yeah.
And that is also, I'll just cut in right here because that's also my number 8. So my next pick was 8. I had it there too, just because it was probably one of the most shocking NFL games in history. To me,
it really was.
Brett Favre made a play to win a playoff game. I mean, that's just an absolute. I mean, it's probably one of the top 10 upsets in NFL history. But then again, when you think about it, he did it against the Detroit Lions. So
yeah,
it's probably not that big a deal, really. But hey, anytime Brett Favre can do something positive, I mean, it beats the time he sent pictures of his junk to that reporter. So what the hell? What's your number 8, Matt?
Well, before I get to my number 8, I did want to say how the Bills Jets game that you mentioned, that I was very close to sticking that in there. Wasn't it the Frank Lewis game where he just went off for like 160 yards and 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, but the main thing about that game was just the fact that the Jets continuously turned the ball over in the first half. I mean, both those teams were very good, and they proved it the next year also. I mean, and the Bills, right. I mean, they gave Cincinnati all they could handle. That game went down to the wire in the divisional playoff the next week, where the Bengals just totally manhandled the Chargers. and they'd manhandled them twice that year. So I think there's a case to be made that Buffalo probably was the second-best team in the AFC that year.
Yep. I think I'd have to agree with you on that. They did come close to knocking off the Bengals that year, but Bengals were the best team in the AFC that season. So, but yeah, that was.
And unfortunately, that Bills team was really good. I mean, in '80 they lost a close game to San Diego. '79, I think they lost 16-13 on in overtime that kept them out of the playoffs. I know that because somebody actually posted the 1979 Buffalo Bills highlight film on YouTube, and I watched the first 20 seconds of it, and they started off with that. But so that was a team that easily could have made the playoffs 3 years in a row, and with a break in either one of the divisional playoff games they played, could have been in a championship game.
Yeah, it really was. It's one of the forgotten teams, and even the New York Stock Exchange Jets, that was a pretty good team as well. And the Jets were pretty scrappy, keeping it close. But then I believe it was Joe Cribbs that put it away with a long touchdown.
Yeah, and you look at the '82
Jets. One.
The '82 Jets might have been the best team in football.
Yeah, I don't know how they didn't go to the Super Bowl that year.
Well, I know how, because Don Shula, holier than thou, I don't ever cheat, and I'm on the competition committee telling people how to live their lives and play their game, left the field uncovered. I mean, come on, he had David Woodley at quarterback. There's no way he wanted to have to throw the ball. I mean, it slowed down Freeman McNeil, and, I mean, basically they won the game because A.J. Dewey picked off, 3 passes in that game?
Yeah. A lot of interceptions.
And then they go to the Super Bowl with that Dolphins team, and if it wasn't for Fulton Walker's kickoff return, that's a 27-10 game, and nobody even thinks anything of that game.
Right. The Redskins.
But go ahead and get to number 7. You're the one that said you didn't want this show to go too long tonight.
Okay. My number 8 is the 2008 AFC wild card between the Colts and the Chargers. Hard-fought game. Peyton Manning, pretty good game, and then the Colts were able to defensively forced a couple of turnovers in the end zone, went to overtime, and basically the Chargers just went down the field, and then I believe it was Darren Sproles that ran like a 20 or 25-yard run to win the game. Pretty good game. Unfortunately for Peyton Manning, it's just another one of those one-and-done games. And but the Chargers were pretty good that year, and they had beaten them the year before as well, so it wasn't like a total fluke or anything.
Okay, my number 7, because I got that one a little bit higher, not much, but
okay.
My number 7 is Seattle-Dallas 2006, just because I think it's funnier than hell how they lost.
It was a funny ending.
They can't win a playoff game. I mean, Seattle took the lead on a Hasselbeck touchdown. Hasselbeck, and people forget, Matt Hasselbeck, at his prime, was a top NFL quarterback. I mean, he took Seattle to the Super Bowl. I mean, he took them to the playoffs multiple times. And then Tony Romo comes out early in his career, so nobody knows how ill-fated it is, which makes it funny. It's like Bill Buckner missing a ground ball. But then again, Bill Buckner is Bob Stanley's fault more than Bill Buckner and Calvin Schiraldi. But Tony Romo drives the Cowboys 70 yards to set up a chip shot 19-yard field goal. And I had a friend. This is the funny part. I had a friend that called me at the time, and he said, "Hey, you said the Cowboys couldn't win a playoff game with this team. We're about to win it." And just then the ball is snapped, and Tony Romo fumbles it. And the game is over, and my friend who was on the phone suddenly just hung up.
Didn't even have wasn't able to even stay on the line to go.
He hung up, and I called him back for like a week until he finally answered the phone, and then I just laughed, and he hung up again, and we're no longer friends. But hey, that's the stuff that happens sometimes.
That's awesome.
But sometimes I can be kind of an ass. But number 7, I know you want to debate that with me, but we're just going to let it go for now. Your number 7 is?
1993.
Your number 7 is?
1993 Chiefs Steelers.
God, what a homer. Joe Montana.
Homer? Chiefs aren't my team.
Homer, you're a homer.
But it was a Joe Montana wild card win. But I realize I'm violating rule number 1. I can't mention 49ers or players that ever played for the 49ers. So,
here we go again with your woe is me complex while being a bully. Go ahead.
I know I'm not allowed to talk about it, but But yeah, the Steelers.
God, are you going to kick your number 7 or what? I mean, I'm good with it because, Pittsburgh lost in a wild card game. It'll be just like Saturday night.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what you're hoping. So this was a good memory for.
Go ahead. Go ahead. The 49ers
young Bill Cowher. I believe this was young Bill Cowher's first. Oh no, he did make it in '92. So this is his second season.
Yeah, '92. They were actually his number 1 seed. Remember? They were either. I thought they were. I don't know. They were 1 or 2. They were like 12 and 4. They were 12 and 4.
And they had Barry Foster.
I mean, Frank Reich had led Buffalo to the big win over Houston, which I'm sure we'll both get to later on.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, that was a game where Buffalo came out and just imposed their will on a young team that was just happy to be there. Yeah, but
that's just it. And then so the Steelers are really building on that. They got quite a young team, good team. Barry Foster, Neil O'Donnell, Ernie Mills, and Ernie Mills put them ahead. And late in the fourth quarter, Joe was able to bring them back from, I believe, a 10-point deficit, force overtime, and then they were able to go into overtime and win. These are both these games are on the road, I believe. But those 2 comebacks that year. But that was in the wild card round. One of the best games I ever saw growing up in the '90s.
Growing up in the '90s, I wish I could say that. I wouldn't be so damn old now. Number 6. I'm going to go ahead and go first because you already picked this game, which is why I picked a couple times because you started off first, and I don't want to wait to get to it because I'll forget what I was going to say, and I'll forget what you said. So my number 6 is San Diego 23, Indianapolis 17 in overtime, 2008. A lot of people criticize the Chargers for being a playoff team at 8-8 and hosting the 12-4 Colts. I know you would have been one of those people that didn't believe they should be a home team from a conversation.
I have my reasons, but you go ahead.
Pick 'em show. National perception was the Colts were going to kick their butts. I mean, they had to win their last 4 games of the season to get in. The Denver Broncos had a collapse. Was that a Mike Shanahan collapse?
Yep. Might have been. That was the Ed Hockley game, wasn't it? Or was that later? Yeah, it was. I know it was a Bronco collapse.
I don't pay attention to no damn referees anyways. But Indianapolis ended the regular season on a 9-game winning streak, had beaten the Chargers 23-20, but ultimately it was way too much Darren Sproles, who had probably his greatest game ever and one of his biggest game ever. He ended up with 328 all-purpose yards, including a game-winning 22-yard touchdown run in overtime. Nate Kading, I think, kicked a 26-yard field goal with 31 seconds left in regulation to force the overtime. But I think it is a game that was a large upset. Everybody always remembers when the 8-8 Seahawks beat the, 11-5 Saints? But this is an 8-8 team beating a 12-4 team that had won 9 straight games. I think it's one of the greatest upsets in NFL history, which we need to do a show about that, too, top 10 NFL upsets.
Absolutely. Lots of great upsets.
Yeah, so we definitely need to do that, too. But that is my number 6.
Well, my number 6 actually kind of piggybacks what you were talking about. I've got the 7-9 Seattle Seahawks of 2010 hosting the 11-5 New Orleans Saints. The Saints are coming off their Super Bowl year. They were really banged up going into the game against the Seahawks, especially at running back. They were down to like their 4th or 5th running back. But what was interesting about that game is this was probably the coming out party for Marshawn Lynch. I mean, he had a good career up to that point in Buffalo, and then they had acquired him either the year before or that year. And Matt Hasselbeck gets really forgotten. Everybody remembers the Marshawn Lynch run, which was, boy, if that's not one of the top 3 runs in NFL history, I don't know what is. But I mean, that was an incredible run by Marshawn Lynch. But what gets forgotten in the whole thing is Matt Hasselbeck threw 4 touchdowns in that game, including a couple of long passes. And even though the Saints were banged up, Drew Brees definitely made a game of it. I believe the game was something like 44-34, 41-34, something like that. And the Saints kept clawing back, but the Seahawks just kept their foot on the throat. So, given the fact that they were 7-9, getting the home field advantage in those games, it was really big. I don't think they go into New Orleans and even have a chance to win that game, but because they're at home and the way everything worked out, just a very inspired performance by that team.
All right. Did you want to go ahead and go to your number 5? Because I don't want you whining now. I never let you go first. Want me to go first?
No, you know what? I will defer to you. You go ahead.
All right.
Well, actually, you know what? I will, because I've got my number 5 actually is a game that you mentioned. It's just the 2002 Steelers-Browns. The Steelers were down by so much and made quite a comeback. And, to go ahead to get their first lead of the game, I think they scored 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes. So, the Tommy Maddox game. That's my number 5.
All right, my number 5, I thought about putting it a little bit higher. I like high-scoring games, but when there's not a whole lot of defense, it's harder for me to put it at number 1. The game had over 1,000 yards in offense. I'm talking about the Arizona 51-45 overtime win in Arizona in 2009. Was that Rodgers' first playoff game, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
And I think he might have thrown for more yards in that one playoff game than Brett Favre did in his first 4. But never can not take a shot at Brett Favre. I learned that from you. But in a game that had over 1,000 yards in offense, it featured a Packer comeback from 21 points down in the second half. The thing that was really astounding about the game was the game ended on a defensive touchdown. The Cardinals' Carlos Dansby returned an Aaron Rodgers fumble 17 yards in overtime to win the game. Dansby was actually involved in 3 turnovers forced by the Arizona defense. The game set a ton of records. The 96 points were the most combined points in a playoff game. The 1,024 yards were the most ever in a playoff game. The Packers set franchise record for points scored and allowed in the same game. And Rodgers and Warner combined for 9 touchdown passes. I just think overall it was a game where you had 2 guys that I think will be Hall of Fame quarterbacks and probably should be. We got to let Rodgers finish his career yet, but I think Kurt Warner should be in anyways. I think 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks both got hot on the same day. It is a very entertaining game.
No question. I have that game a little bit higher, but absolutely, that was one of the best games I've ever seen.
Do you want me to do number 4?
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 4, the old mafioso boss, Joe Rodriguez, did not want to do this show because he knew he was going to have to talk about this game. That's what he told me, too. I said last night, me and Matt are doing the top 10 wildcard games. I said, you want to do it with us? He said, no. Matt's just going to talk for about a half an hour on that 2002 49ers.
Half an hour.
We have had a show before where you did talk a long time about that game. It was that show that sucked that we never posted, remember, about our most disappointing games?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Joe brought it up, and then you wouldn't stop. But nobody ever heard it, so that's all right.
I think I knew that wasn't getting
remember
posted.
About now, see, this day that the Niners beat the Giants 39-38 in 02, I mean, that might have been the greatest day of wild card games. Because that was the same day where a few hours before the Pittsburgh Steelers had defeated the Cleveland Browns.
Exactly.
It also might have had the most bizarre ending in NFL history. The Niners were down 38-14, which made me really happy because I really hate the 49ers since they beat my Bengals twice in a Super Bowl. Plus, their fans are arrogant and their owner cheated and paid players under the table. But I'll digress.
Oh, boy.
But they launched a stunning comeback to capture an improbable 39-38 win. The game ended when the Giants botched the snap on a potential game-winning field goal. The holder threw the ball downfield on a play which many Giants fans will claim was pass interference to this day, because it was. Were called for an illegal man downfield on the play. A ton of stars emerged that day. Probably Jeff Garcia, one of his finest efforts, threw for 331 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushed for 60 and another touchdown. Terrell Owens, who was just made a finalist for the Hall of Fame. I believe that was today or yesterday.
Today.
Caught 9 passes for 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 two-point conversions. Kerry Collins somehow threw for 342 yards and 4 touchdowns. Tiki Barber ran for 115, had 60 yards receiving. Amani Toomer, 8 catches, 136 yards, 3 touchdowns in defeat. I mean, it was absolutely a great football game. Ended controversially. But then again, if you're up 38-14 in the third quarter, maybe it never should come to that. What's your number 4?
Well, I messed up a little bit. I accidentally had 2 number 5s, so I'm just going to combine these two since the games are very similar.
No, I don't think this is the first time that has happened to you either.
I don't know how that happened. I'm like, why does this say 5-5? But so my number 4 was the 2002 Giants-Niners as well. But I also had the 2013 Chiefs-Colts snuck in there. Both those games are very similar. 20-plus point deficits for the teams that ended up coming back and winning. First, the Chiefs-Colts. You got Alex Smith just playing out of his mind, getting up 38-10 up on the Colts. They're intercepting Andrew Luck. And the problem was they got up way too soon. Andrew Luck had basically an entire half, and he was able to put up a couple of touchdowns pretty quick. Early in the fourth quarter, the Alex Smith threw an interception, or got a fumble, and the Colts were able to win 45-44. Very high-scoring game. It was kind of an ugly game, but yet there was still enough really great plays for this to count. So that one, and then like you said, the 2002 Niners-Giants game, the Giants really could have put them away if Jeremy Shockey comes down with the touchdown early in the fourth quarter. It went right through his hand. If he catches that, there's no way the Niners are going to come back. But he didn't catch it, and like you said, down 38-14, being able to come back and close out the win. So those were that's kind of a combined, but they're 2 very similar games.
All righty. You want to start with 3 or you want me to?
Number 3. Well, this game was very special to me, but it was still one of the best games I ever saw. The 98 Packers at Niners, the wild card game, the game where Terrell Owens came down with what they call the catch number 2. What was really cool about that game was the Niners and Packers were both 2 teams that really could have competed for the championship game, and they still really had good records. Niners were 12-4, Packers were 11-5. But because of the way the Falcons and Vikings had played, they ended up being in the wild card game. So there was a couple of teams that had met in the championship game the year before, now playing in the wild card game. You still have Steve Young versus Favre, really pretty stacked rosters on both sides of the ball. Dorsey Levens had a really good game. Garrison Hurst, that was his career year. And it looked like it was going to start off kind of the same. And then the Niners kind of took control. And then the Packers were able to – it's one of those games where the lead changed like 5 or 6 times. And then Favre was able to throw a touchdown with like a minute and some remaining, and Steve Young led that final drive, and Owens was able to come down with it. A lot of great plays, a lot of craziness in that game. But one of the best games I ever saw. Last-second touchdown to Owens, and was pretty cool.
All righty, that is actually my number 2. But my number 3 is the Music City Miracle, or as the Tennessee Titans call it, home run throwback. One of the most improbable finishes in NFL history. Tennessee beats Buffalo 22-16. If I remember right, Steve Christie gave Buffalo a 16-15 lead with 16 seconds left. Then they called the play originally for Frank Wycheck to catch the ball and then turn and throw it to Derek Mason. Well, the problem was Mason was hurt earlier in the game, not available. So fullback Lorenzo Neal, who was a great fullback in the NFL, was the player who actually caught the ball. Neal ran, handed to Wycheck, threw the ball across to Mason's fill-in, Kevin Dyson. The play called for the player to get out of bounds as soon as he would be challenged, but he raced downfield untouched. I think the referee there was Phil Luckett, who went under the hood to review the play. The play was very close. They upheld the play just because you're not getting out of Tennessee alive if you don't. But the Titans went on to a 22-16 win. Would eventually advance to the Super Bowl before losing their own heartbreaker. Ironically, Dyson was the guy stopped at the 1 as time expired with the Titans down 7 in Super Bowl, what was that, 36?
Yep, 34.
34, yeah, that's right. 36 was the New England Ram game. But and I still think to this day, I think Wade Phillips coached that team, and I still think to this day he's got to kick himself in the ass for not starting Doug Flutie, but I may be wrong there.
No, I think you're right on that. You know, that's the thing that really gets remembered as far as the Bills go in that game is, you know, Rob Johnson gets hurt, and Doug Flutie is probably the best season of his pro career. Yeah, probably the best season of his pro career. He did everything to get that team to the playoffs. I wouldn't say it was a really good Bills team, but it was all right. And but Doug Flutie was really the driving force behind it. And then you get to the playoffs, Rob Johnson's healthy, and he just puts him in, and it just I don't think it was a good move at all.
Well, I think it was the safest move for him. I mean, a lot of head coaches trying to keep their job. If you play with Doug Flutie and lose with the little dude, and you had Rob Johnson sitting there, I think it's more explainable to lose with Rob Johnson than Doug Flutie, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. Maybe he just doesn't like short people, because there are people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I like short people. They're cute. Let's see. Number 2. What's your pick, Matt? Number 2.
Number 2, I had the 2009 Packers-Cardinals, the highest-scoring wild card game in history. What was really interesting about that game was the Cardinals really seemed like they were going to just impose their will on the Packers that day. They were up by 17 twice. And both times,
you just thought Brett Favre was quarterback in that Packer team that year. And then Aaron Rodgers showed up.
Well, that's just it. Aaron Rodgers was able to tie the game both times, and when it got to overtime, this is kind of one of the marks, one of the smudges on his resume is, you know, Greg Jennings breaks wide open and he misses him. He overthrows him. He hits Greg Jennings, the game's over, and they're moving on to the Saints. But he missed him, and then you know, once the Cardinals punted again, then we got, like you talked about, the fumble, and that was the game. But very entertaining game. You know, like you said, didn't have a whole lot of defense. But 51-45, that's, like you said, it set all those records. That was really an entertaining game to watch.
Righty, my number 2 was the 98 San Francisco 30-27 win over Green Bay. I believe Terrell Owens had a few massive drops early in that game, too.
Oh, it was awful. He had one of them, which I'll give him.
Why they were losing, probably.
Yeah, he fumbles the first pass thrown by Steve Young. He catches it, but then it gets knocked out, and then he drops a touchdown. You know, it looked like the sun was definitely in his eyes. The sun was super bright that day, so I'll give him that one. But he dropped a really big third down after Favre threw an interception in the fourth quarter, which would have probably iced the game.
Oh, Favre wouldn't throw an interception in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. What are you smoking over there?
Yeah, I know, right? What's wrong with that?
But he did have a big drive that took the lead 27-23 with 1:56 left. And the thing I don't think people realize is, the 25-yard touchdown pass with 8 seconds left to Terrell Owens, that pass was immortalized by 49er announcer Joe Starkey, who was the same announcer that called the Cal Stanford play in 1982.
Oh, yeah, where they ran through the
through the band.
Yeah, I'll never forget. Yeah,
as y'all can tell, Matt don't watch a lot of college football. So.
Well, I don't, but I know that game. I know the ending of that game.
And plus the 49ers, and I know this is what Matt likes most about it, the 49ers ended a 3-game postseason losing streak to Green Bay with that game also, which got all those people to work off of his ass.
No one
I
talked
believe we are both
day.
number 1, correct? We both are to number 1, correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And I believe we both have the same number 1.
I don't think anybody in their right mind. Say that again?
Yeah, didn't I? Well, so we agree on this. It's definitely the 1990 AFC wildcard game between the Bengals and the Oilers, where the Bengals last won a playoff game, beating the Oilers 41-14.
41-14. Yeah, that's the last time.
Great game. Bengals led the whole way, destroyed them. Commander Cody Carlson was the quarterback for the Oilers. Now, I believe both our number ones is Buffalo, Houston, 1992, 41-38. Oilers raced to a 28-3 halftime lead. I remember I was excited. My best friend Kelly, he'd become a huge Buffalo Bills fan. God only knows why. I don't know why. He was still mainly a Bengals fan, but his backup team was the Bills. Now, right there, you know you're kind of screwed because that's 6 Super Bowls in, a decade you lose? But I remember calling him, and I was gloating. I was like, hey, dumbass, you said they're going to win the Super Bowl. They're down 28-3 in the wild card game. And he, whatever. And then I think Bubba McDowell returns an interception 58 yards for a touchdown a couple minutes into the second half. And then I call him, and he won't even answer. One of those just like that Cowboy fan. And then Buffalo explodes for like 28 points to take the lead, and guess who called me? Kelly. He called.
How long did it take for you to pick up?
Come back and win. I picked up right away. I was good. I don't shy away from confrontation like most people. So I picked the phone up.
No, you don't. I'll give you that.
And then it's 35 unanswered points. It's 38-35, but Al Del Greco comes back, kicks a field goal to make it 38-38. I call him back. I said, see, you asshole, you called me. And it's not even over yet. And then, like, a few minutes later, he called me, and that was it. But
yeah,
we're still friends, so it's not like that Dallas thing.
That's good. Yeah, another game, the game that set that wild card game up the week before in the Astrodome, real tough win.
Got hurt.
Exactly, real tough win by the Oilers, and they knocked out Jim Kelly. And I don't remember what happened to Thurman Thomas because he wasn't playing in that wild card game either. I know they both came back. Frank Reich played in the divisional game against the Steelers.
Thurman Thomas started the game and was forced out of the game early with an injury.
Okay.
Because Kenneth Davis came in for him. Kenneth Davis was a
Kenneth Davis scores.
But he wasn't Thurman Thomas.
Right. But, yeah, it was...
And I mean, also, the other thing... Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I'll make my point.
And the other thing is, and I think it's been brought up before, is Frank Reich was also a part of the biggest comeback at the time in college football history. When he led the Maryland Terrapins to a 31-0 deficit, or from a 31-0 deficit against Miami of Florida to a come-from-behind win over Miami of Florida, and it was at Miami. Sorry about that, Leon Searcy, if you're listening.
Yeah, I know maybe 10 or 15 college games, and that's one of them.
Yeah, at one point he had the biggest college comeback ever, and he had the biggest NFL playoff comeback ever.
Exactly.
Is it still the NFL playoff biggest comeback ever?
Yep, it's still the biggest one. It's the biggest comeback in NFL history.
Now, did that break the record at the time of your 49ers against the Lions?
49ers against the Lions? Well, the Niners-Saints regular season game from 1980 is still the biggest regular season comeback. But, I don't know about a Niners-Lions playoff deficit. I mean, I know the 83
a real fan
game,
of a team would know about all their playoffs.
Well, it wasn't anything, near a 35-3 deficit.
I believe it was.
I think they won that game 24-23. Or no, it was a 30-27. They played back-to-back. They played week 1 in 84 too, so I always get those scores mixed up.
Now this is the other thing about the 31-point comeback. Frank Reich was not the starting quarterback on that team either. Stan Gelbaugh was. Stan Gelbaugh actually played in the NFL for a while, and I think that he was the MVP of one of the World Bowls, one of the first 2 World Bowls. I think he played for London or Barcelona. We ought to have, like, the 10 greatest games in World League of American Football history show, too. What do you think? People would love it.
There's a 1975 one, and then I remember 1990 or 91 it came back.
Well, we're talking about the 1991 because absolutely nobody cared about either one, so it doesn't really matter. I don't think.
No, but the wild card game was pretty cool. I remember watching that with my dad and my brother. I really liked that Buffalo team. They were real fun to watch. I know you're probably not real big on them just because of the whole, the Marv Levy, Sam Weiss seemed to be some kind of a feud and stuff. But I really enjoyed watching that
Levy
team.
copied everything he did.
Yeah, and I agree with you on
Also,
that.
the 49ers-Lions was the biggest comeback up until that point. That was a 27-7 lead that was lost 31-27. And I know why you don't want to talk about it, because San Francisco had a 27-7 lead at Old Kezar Stadium and blew it 31-27.
Oh, okay.
I just figured I'd bring that up.
That's the 1957. All right. I thought you were talking about the 83 game. Yeah, that was a bad one. I forgot about that.
The 83 game was 20.
But it wasn't a wild card game, so I didn't think it was relevant for today.
It wasn't. We were talking about the biggest comeback in playoff history up until that point, though.
Gotcha.
At least as far as
Yeah, that was a bad one. But I remember watching the 92 one with my dad and my brother, and I was really pulling for Buffalo. They had lost 2 straight Super Bowls. I was like, maybe, if the Niners don't get there against, if they end up losing to Dallas, hopefully the Bills will win. But I remember being down 35-3, and Kenneth Davis scored, and then I remember Don Beatty stepping out of bounds and then coming back in, and they didn't really notice it, and he scored. But Andre Reed was he had probably the biggest game of his career in that game. I think he had like 3 touchdowns in that comeback, including the big one on 4th and 5. Just the game really had everything. Good, real fun game to watch.
All right. Well, real quick, I would like to thank everybody and have everybody go to Spreaker, look for The Grilling Truth. Go to Facebook, look for The Grilling Truth Facebook page. But make sure you check out our NFL Pick'em show with myself, Leon Searcy, Scott Meyer from RealBengalFans.com, of course, Matt, Joe Rodriguez. We had a Pick'em show, had a great time doing it. And I'd really like to thank the people who have already listened to it, over 1,600 listens already, Matt. The Cincinnati Bengals Weekly Show with myself and Joe Kelly last night. Jim Breach was our guest, and I'd like to thank everybody for listening to that also. When I told you that was at 5 earlier, Matt, it is now over 1,200.
That's awesome.
Make sure
thanks
you
everyone
check
for
out
listening.
Next, huh?
I said thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, that's like 3,000 listens on 2 shows in 24 hours. Make sure you check out the RealBengalsFans.com Cincinnati Bengals Trivia Show. We will have the next round coming up shortly. The Pick and Pop NBA show is an NBA weekly show with Rodney Newpel. Make sure you check him out. He's had 2 episodes so far. Dave Sidursky will be back with me for more boxing shows in the near future. Not much going on boxing usually until the end of January, start of February. Next Tuesday night, the interview will actually be Tuesday afternoon. The next Tuesday night, I will be interviewing former NFL quarterback Jeff Kemp, son of also the late, great Jack Kemp, who also ran for president, I believe, in 1980 and 84. I think 88 also. But Jeff Kemp will be on to talk about his book, Facing the Blitz. We will also have our divisional pick'em show next Tuesday night with myself, Leon Searcy, Matt Andruscavage, and a surprise picker or 2. And we will also have next week a Bengals Weekly show, which hopefully will be previewing a game and not reviewing a season. And we will also, me and Matt will do, or Matt and I got to use proper English, but Matt and I will have a top 10 divisional playoff games in NFL history show also. And we are looking at doing a show with Joe Rodriguez to go over the NBA finalists. Plus, we've got another interview with an author who wrote a book about the top 50 underrated running backs of all time. So make sure you check out all that. Go check all our sponsors, Gridiron Mode, www.gridironmode.com. Great new interactive football app. Be a good time to download it off the iTunes store this weekend. Play along. You pick the plays. You see what everybody else picked, kind of see how you compare to them. We'll check out SteelbergBox.com. That's www.steelbergbox.com. For any Pittsburgh Steeler fans have a birthday coming up, or just if you're a Steeler fan and you want to buy some Steeler merchandise to commemorate your season, which will end Saturday night, that'd be a lot of fun too. And then that was mean, wasn't it?
Well,
I'm sorry, Pittsburgh Steeler fans. It was just all in good fun, though. Also, check out RealBengalsFans.com if you're a Bengals fan. Yeah, I do, but I don't. I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted now. So we'll just act like I didn't mean it, and nobody will be mad at me. But if the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs or the Super Bowl, I will cheer for the Steelers. I just wanted to bring that up. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I really don't like Jerry Jones, but I don't know.
It's hard to cheer for a
any final words,
rival.
Matt? I'm out of stuff to say now. I'm just pumped up. Also, tomorrow night, if you're a Bengals fan or a Steelers fan, at 11:30 Eastern Time tomorrow night on Blog Talk Radio, we'll have a live Bengals Steelers preview show with myself, Leon Searcy, Scott Meyer from RealBengalsFans.com. The number's going to be posted all over almost every Bengal and Steelers site all day tomorrow and tomorrow night. Make sure you call in. You can ask questions. You can make your predictions. It'll be a half hour. It'll be fun as long as me and Leon don't hog the whole time. We promise if you call, we will try to get you on. So we're excited about that also. So, Matt?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything. I think, as far as our top 10 list, I think we did our due diligence and went through all the wild card games, and I think we pretty much covered all the big ones. And we ended up agreeing on what I don't see really how the Bills-Oilers game can't be the number one. That was by far the best wild card game that's ever been played up to this point. But we'll see what happens next week when we pick the divisional rounds.
Yeah, maybe we can get a Bengals game in there. I don't know, though. I don't remember any great ones. Are
there a lot of them?
Bills and yeah, there's a ton. Actually, there are. You got 70, 73, 75, 81, 88, 90. There's like 6 of them there over 50 years. That's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, that is pretty good.
And then the next week, when you get to the championship games, there's 2 of them. But when you get to the Super Bowl, there's 2, and there's a lot of teams that haven't been to 2 Super Bowls.
That's very true.
And the Cleveland Browns have never been anything since everything was in color, as Leon would say. But all right, well, we're going to get off here. Just make sure you check us out on our Grilling Truth Facebook page. Check us out on Spreaker and Stitcher. We will be on iHeart shortly, so keep aware for that. So for Matt Andruscavage, this is Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grilling Truth, where the legends speak.